listeners, and welcome to High Tea Mystique with your hosts, Kat.
And I'm Tess.
And Pam.
In a world changing faster than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea,
High Tea Mystique reminds you that no experience is too big or too small to teach us something about ourselves. So join us for a cup of tea as we steep into adulting, womanhood, independence, and more.
It actually looks like you're doing a great dance move right now.
Is it the granny? The granny?
The walker.
Oh, the walker.
I think of
You're the walker. How's everybody today?
So exhausted.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I know when Pam told me that she was tired today, I was like, 30s. So fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
Changes the game.
Changes the
Changes
game.
the
It
game.
really does.
Yeah.
Changes the pace, that's for sure.
It's also fun to remember that our first episode, someone I know listened to our first episode recently, and it's crazy to think about that it was called 28 Things We Wish We Knew
I
Before
know.
We Were 28. And we felt and were wise then, but like, damn. The things I've learned in like the past 6 months are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And in like 2 years, you're gonna feel like you're
Exactly.
gonna
Oh
learn
my
more.
God.
So
Mm-hmm.
I've honestly learned to start transitioning the fact, like when someone tells me I'm young and I'm say I'm 30, then I'm like I make that face, but I'm like, you know what? No, this is when I start to transition and say thank you.
yes.
Yeah, like
Yes.
thank you for the reminder. I am still very young.
30, flirty, and thriving.
Period. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with our topic for today, but we are super excited for what we have for everybody. So I think it's time to say hello. Welcome back, everybody, to High Tea Mystique. As you may or may not see, we have actually, you've already heard her voice.
Yes.
It's more than 3 of us today.
Woo.
We are all here, but we have a guest episode. And this is Kat speaking. And personally, I'm very excited because this is actually the first time that I have a guest.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, really? I'm the first guest.
yeah,
Her
you're
first
my
guest.
Your
guest.
first,
Oh,
yeah, your
okay.
cat's
Yeah,
first
because
guest.
we all have opportunities to be able to bring people into our little world here. And I think it's happened very organically where it kind of just ties in really well with the way that our season is flowing and like what topics we want to have. And so when you organically reached out to me and were just like, hey, when are we going to make this happen? I was like, I think this works really well, especially when we realized we just entered Mercury in retrograde, which we are
Yep.
Yep.
in the heat of still now as this
Mhm.
episode comes out. And you are such a good person to speak on because our guest today is a friend of mine. Her name is Nicole. Welcome, Nicole. We're
Hello,
so happy to
hello.
have
I am
you.
Nicole. Thank you
And
for having me.
Nicole not only is a badass bitch herself with her own podcast called The
Mhm.
Sip and Grow. I don't want to say too much. I want to let her give a little bit of a background on it. But before I do, I just want to say that she's joining us today because my relationship with Nicole began at a job that we both worked in the very recent past, and we ended up talking just about every single lunch break, and then also like took time during the shift when we were supposed to be working to just talk about life and just talk about all of the ways that we were very similar, our spiritual connection, our understanding of how karmic energy is very real, and the power of putting yourself where you want to be.
Yep.
And so I think it's really natural for our topic for today. But before I get into that, I want to let Nicole say a little bit about herself, what she does with her podcast, and how other people can listen to it, because they're definitely going to want to after they hear this episode.
First of all, I feel honored to be your first guest. Like, thank you so much.
Aw,
So I am Nicole. I do have a podcast. It's wine based. It's called Sip and Grow the Podcast. We basically just drink awesome wines, and I talk about the winemaking process a little bit and tie in like spirituality, entrepreneurship, life, struggles, whatever, anything and everything. I tie it into there because I'm also an athlete as well. So like if I can get an athlete guest on there, we'll get an athlete on there. But I just basically like everything, a little bit of everything. So we just sprinkle enlightenment with drinking wine and having fun. But yeah, it was a passion project, and it's more to just kind of keep me in line when in check with my wine education while having fun and meeting new people and having new experiences and just getting better at, you know, conversing with people, because that's something that I enjoy doing. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And Nicole is not only, not only does she do the podcast as a passion project, but she also works professionally in the spirits industry. She's actually a wine rep for a bunch of different wineries and vineyards
Yes.
and spirits as well.
And spirits as well. So the goal would be to one day create my own wine label. So right now I'm currently a sales rep in a distribution company, and I definitely want to get my SOM license and or certification, and also certified in spirits as well. It's just a certification to be like, you know what you're talking about, but you can know what you're talking about without certification. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
it's just
We
like
can
a
understand that.
formality,
I
you
think
know?
all of us really understand that.
Yeah.
Because we've
Oh,
all had to get
yeah.
specialized in our fields too.
It's like something necessary that's, some people that are certified don't really know as much as other people that don't
Yeah.
have
But
certification.
let me tell you, that papelito helps.
I know,
to
it
just jump
does.
over that hurdle.
Yeah, when you're
Yeah.
trying to get established in a new space, that's the only way you can
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Well, I think that's a great transition because the topic that is perfect for us to be discussing today with Nicole, we're actually going to be talking about visualization and manifestation. And this is so exciting because this is something that we touch on in so many different episodes, right? Like you just hear us naturally kind of highlight it, right? And how it works in our life, how we've been guided, right, to make certain choices, trusting our gut. But we've never had a full on episode about it, which I think is really interesting. And it's we've also mentioned many times of like, oh, when we do our episode on manifestation, we'll get more into this. So here we are, literally manifesting the opportunity, and an awesome one because we get to bring in another voice and talk about that too. And I'm excited to be talking about this with you because your journey just in your career is a great example
Yeah.
of visualization. And so I know we're going to get into that and other things as well. But before we do, as you love to have a wine on
Yes.
your podcast,
Yes.
we always have a tea on our podcast. So we're going to talk about the tea that we have today. But I can't really talk about it this time because I didn't provide the tea. Tess didn't provide the tea. Pam didn't provide the tea.
Mm-mm.
This is actually provided by our guest, Nicole.
Surprise, surprise.
You're starting off very well.
Yes.
Okay, so I actually have one of my best friends who I met 10 years ago, studying abroad in Italy. Very random. She's from Western Massachusetts, other side of the United States. And we ended up being roommates randomly. We became very close very quickly because we were in one bedroom together in Italy, a foreign country. So you get to know someone real well when you're
Oh, yeah.
living with them in a bedroom. But anyways, fast forward, she has her own like certifications as well. She loves anything in the food industry, and she studied like herbs and all that good stuff. So she decided to create a tea company. She has like 5 companies, but that's her baby. She loves it. She's passionate about it, and she's also very spiritual as well. So she wanted to use her healing gifts and put that into her product to share with people to hopefully help them in whatever they're going through. So her teas have to do with aligning your chakras. And she sent me this week a couple of teas that I brought on the podcast today. So we're doing a mix of the sacral chakra and the manifestation tea. So the
perfect.
sacral chakra, she has like a little sheet that comes with your order, but it's basically like if you're feeling out of balance with like lack of pleasure and passion, mood swings, or have like poor social skills or fear of change, if you need balance in that, you drink the sacral chakra tea and it'll help you balance out and feel like you have healthy boundaries, emotional stability, and open to change. So, and then the manifestation one is just basically to align you and your manifestations, and it's just a really powerful tool to just kind of use everything that you use for manifestation to kind of tie it all and bring it together while you're in that process. So whatever that process looks like for you, everyone has a different form of manifesting their things, but that's like a good tool to use in your manifestation journey, I guess. So
Yeah, absolutely. Everything matters, I would say,
yes.
when we are manifesting because it's all about intention. And I just want to highlight a couple of ingredients in each of the teas because they are very different, but as Tess mentioned, they have some overlap, which is really nice. They're both rooibos teas. So they're both based from the South African shrub. We've tried it here many times before, which we know is an anti-inflammatory. So both of these have incredible feminine energy and incredible feminine energy support. So what I think is super cool about the manifestation tea is it has the blue lotus flower. And we've also had that before on an episode. And we kind of got into how it has psychoactive properties. Not if you drink it, but if you inhale it, right? So if you were to smoke the blue lotus, there are psychoactive properties. Nothing insanely high, but I think that there are parts of the U.S. where it's technically not legal. Not Florida, though. We're good. We're good here. And it's also associated spiritually with creation and rebirth. So just a perfect tea for our episode today. And there's also hibiscus, candied ginger, passion fruit, right? Speaking on the passion, like really, really beautiful blends here. And we all have tasted the tea already. Any first thought?
I took a sip earlier because I couldn't wait. It's so good.
It's really, really good
And
blend.
the smell, it's so fruity and herbal and light. I don't know. I love it.
The color is beautiful. It's
Mhm.
very vibrant. It is, I think, the second like really natural sweet tea we've had. But yeah,
Yeah, but
amazing.
this is like a nice tart sweet.
Yeah.
For
it's a
sure,
lot of fruit.
yeah.
Sugary.
Yes.
Natural sugars.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, it's delicious. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And what's the name of your friend's tea company?
the name of the company is Daydreamer Apothecary.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll plug that for everybody too, as well as Nicole's podcast, so that if anyone wants to try out these teas and give a listen, yes, you should.
You definitely
We should
should.
get into that.
Yeah. Stick around.
So we're gonna go ahead and hop into the topic. So we just have a few questions for you, Nicole, about your journey into kind of just like falling in love and getting really passionate about visualization, manifestation, and how it brought you to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in order to do that, we kind of have to go back a little bit,
Okay.
you know, so that we can work our way forward into the now, and also just give our viewers a little bit of your history, because Lord knows we've overshared.
What? Cat.
Oversharing. You're right. I don't even think it's oversharing at this point. Just making new friends on the sofa
Exactly.
when they're listening in, or on their drive to work, or washing dishes and doing laundry.
Yeah.
So to introduce you to our community, and
Yes.
you introduce yourself, let's just get into the nitty gritty and kind of start from the beginning, right? Start from the bottom.
Okay.
So have you, right, or can you highlight a little bit of when you were in a situation where it was like you couldn't see a path ahead, right?
Mhm.
Like you felt very stuck in your purpose and in your place in the world, and you couldn't imagine, right, like getting out of that, thinking that maybe this is where you were going to be forever.
Yeah.
Is there a time that you've ever felt like that, and what do you want to share?
I mean, many times I felt like that. And I feel like, which, I mean, I hope you guys have had similar experiences, but I feel like in every area of my life, I've had that feeling of like being stuck, whether it be romantic relationships or career, or maybe there's like financial gain that you want to do and you just feel like you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I feel like the best thing currently that I'm going through is like, I'm in a very transitional point of like getting out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly in everything that I want to do career wise, and kind of creating my own space, because I still live with my parents. So like I feel like definitely everything ties together in feeling stuck because you're in your childhood home and you're trying to, be a butterfly outside of your home where you were once not in your cocoon and you were feeling safe, and now you're out of your cocoon and you're like, what is this place? So I feel like definitely one of the things that I'm currently struggling with is trying to understand that like I need to stay in the moment, because everything does have its time and its purpose and its place. And sometimes you want to jump 5 steps ahead, but it's really hard. Like seeing in the moment that you're actually a lot closer than you think you are. So it's like, instead of getting frustrated, being like, you know what, let's be here right now and understand that you're here for a reason still. Because I think when you're so focused on jumping ahead to what you want to accomplish, you get lost in that versus seeing how much progress you've actually made. Because I went from working a corporate job to saying, you know what, I'm gonna quit my corporate job and follow my passion in the wine industry, which my background's in hospitality and event management. So I jumped around from like working at hotels or working at an event management company, and it just wasn't fulfilling for me, or it wasn't part of I learned a lot of great things from those jobs, like transferable skills for sure. But I always had something in, like, I loved wine and I wanted to get back into the wine industry, and I just didn't know how. But like somehow the universe loves to choose violence a lot of times. And just they were like, you know what, you're not listening, so we're gonna force you to do something that you don't want to do, which is, it was quitting my corporate job because it was getting to a point where it was just really toxic for me, and it was making me unhappy. And then fast forward, I was like, well, now I have the time to work a wine harvest, so we're gonna go to California and work a wine harvest like we always wanted to. And then once I did that, like, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna launch a podcast while I'm working a wine harvest, because why not? And then it's just like you start to amaze yourself in a way, because you don't realize how much, like, I still think it's like kind of crazy that like I launched a podcast. For me, I still have imposter syndrome about it. I'm like, well, yeah, I have a podcast. But it's just really hard, I think, when you're so focused on, okay, but like I want this job, or I want these finances so I can like move out and do all these things, that you don't realize all the steps you've taken to get to the point where you're at. Because when I met Kat at my retail job, that was a transitional job for me. So in that moment, like looking back at it now, I was there for 3 months. And it took me 3 months. Like, I got back from California in November of last year. And then I got that job at the end of January this year. And then I got this new job and started in May. If you look at it from a time frame perspective, that's really fast. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm never gonna have a wine job that I want, to be able to get, the certifications I want to get, or like be surrounded by wines so that I can learn about wines and like get connected in the industry. And then now looking back at it, I'm like, wow, that actually happened really, really fast. Like, that was months. It wasn't even half a year that went by. So I think, for me, definitely that's a huge theme in my life right now, of like, I get that feeling of feeling stuck because my finances aren't exactly where I want them to be in order for me to move out. And with the whole wine situation, like, I got the job, so like now the next step would be to get the move out and the finances to be able to move out. So yeah, that would, I think that would be where I felt the most stuck this year currently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've all had seasons of that.
Mm-hmm.
We had an episode about fear.
Ooh.
Actually, I think maybe it's three episodes back now. And it was because it was a very similar energy and feeling for us. And 3 episodes back actually kind of times out to just around when you started your new job. So very transitional moment for all of us, right? Pam here just graduated with her master's, so she was like at the height, right, of finishing up. Tess was just at the end of her semester, going through the same troubles and difficulties, and me, I was struggling the same thing as you, right? Of like, I know that my time is up at this job, but I don't know what the next opportunity looks like. And so I just think it's always so interesting how energy is very palpable, and what's happening outside is affecting all of us. And that's a great example.
Yeah.
Like, you can always reflect back. You can reflect back years, and you can reflect back months, because it's about the reflection itself and what comes from it.
I think this episode, and kind of like what you were saying, right? The energies, in a way, they sort of align, because everything that you were talking about, Nicole, are even things that I started talking about with my cousin from Peru. And we were having a moment of reflection. and she, for her, she was telling me that it came out from her talking to her therapist, and like her mom kind of reinforcing that, like, yeah, you need to kind of take a moment to acknowledge the progress that you've made. But I feel like whatever's in the air, maybe it's Mercury, trying to really get us to focus and be grateful in terms of all of the progress that we've done, and also almost also realizing that you really don't know where some of the best opportunities will come from.
Yeah.
Right. And so being open to that, because I feel like with my cousin, you know, it's the same idea of imposter syndrome, right? It's like, I can't believe I'm in this place. It feels like I haven't gotten to what I want, like the big picture yet. And even with something, and she has a very specific goal in mind, right? Trying to make a project that she worked on for her master's thesis in, like, that revolves around film, into an actual feature film. That's going to take a really long process, but she's already accomplished so many amazing things that'll get her there. And these are steps that are almost affirmations, right? That you are on the right path, that this opportunity came for a reason, or you've been able to go up to this step for a reason. Even you, right? Going out there to learn about wine, and then starting that podcast. It's all little ways that I think the universe is trying to show us, right? And signs of, yeah, you're on the right path. Like, look how much effort you're putting into this.
Right.
You really do care about this, that even though you're going and doing this training, you're also doing this podcast, and you made it work when you thought it was impossible. Right. And I feel like right now it's very much that season of just a lot of people that I've been talking to in that mindset of, you know, it feels weird, but I there is a lot that I have done. And I think something that's kind of that I wanted to acknowledge as I was hearing you talk, I feel like for those of you who may be younger, right, than our target demographic, I definitely felt that way in my 20s. And I felt that definite pressure of having everything figured out, especially because of everything that you see in media, right? But it's okay if you take your time to figure something out, or if something doesn't work. I feel like a lot of my friends as well, we've been dealt with, we think we have everything in control. And the universe will always have a way to show you, are you sure this is what you really want? You know? And then you'll get those moments where if you're not listening, the universe is gonna come a knocking, door down, kicks it down. And then, but you know, as long as we remind ourselves it is for our better good, you know, and it's really trying, like, listen to what it's trying to tell you. Are you truly happy? Right? Because I feel like that's the end goal, especially with manifestation, right? You're literally manifesting the life of your dreams, or whatever that reality looks like to you. And so part of that, there's going to be beautiful things, but there's also a lot of ugly things and a lot of hard things that you have to go through.
For sure.
And just making sure that you acknowledge, like, damn, I did that. We really did that.
Yeah, I feel like it's about standing beside your demons, right? Not shutting them away, not feeling like they need to go away.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
the
that
most
shadow work.
powerful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Shadows don't go away. They will always be right by you.
You gotta be the best. You gotta be besties with your shadow, because if
Mhm.
not, you're never fully gonna reach your highest potential.
Mm-hmm.
So
A lot of the time, I feel like sometimes people misunderstand shadow work with, like, removing the shadow, you know, and like plucking it out as if it's like an ingrown hair. And I think something that, and when I say people, yeah, you see how ugly that
That's
is?
how people look at it, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's, you know, and because they're thinking, oh, I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be gone, and then I'll be fine. And you know, I'm including myself in that wonderful people swipe that I just did, right? I thought that too. That's what made me stuck too for a long time in my life, for multiple categories. I thought, you know, I'm gonna overcome, I'm gonna remove this and that from myself, and I'll be fine. It doesn't work out like that. I think shadow work, like, it really means understanding it as if you're like listening to your best friend.
Yep.
You know, and you're not judging them, you're not looking to hear them and then improve them, because that's terrible to think about your best friend in that way, right? So the same applies to you. You know, your shadow is there for a reason, but it is your power to understand it, to walk with it and walk it out a little bit from where it came from, you know? And that is really, really hard. Because we love to listen to other people and help them and see the best for them, but it's really hard for people, you know, again, general swipe that I'm including myself in to turn the dime and do it for themselves. Now, I will say it has gotten better because when I was stuck, I was stuck because of that exact reason. I looked at myself as such a problem, and, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I did want to work in this metaphor that my therapist gave me, actually, when we were talking about something similar, and I was just telling her how frustrated I am with myself and how this keeps on happening. And we were actually talking about that, like fear of change and why when I want to change something, this keeps happening. And she said, well, it's actually really common that when you're closer to a completed goal, the more violent that fear will become. Because you have to think of yourself as holding a full glass of water. And your job was actually to collect that water from A to B. So the fuller that cup gets, the more anxious you get about, oh my God, it's almost done. It's almost done. It's almost done. I'm never going to get it done. But you're actually stepping one step closer at a time, and your cup is getting fuller and fuller and fuller. So the fear will get violent. But it's not because it's not happening. Like, you're actually carrying a very full cup.
Yeah.
And because it's so full, just again testifies to how far you have come. But ironically, it is the fullness that is also very scary.
So scary.
Yeah.
And sprinkle in some trauma and just
Yeah.
the whole vibe.
But I failed before, it'll happen again. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
not really. It's still in your hand. It's not on the floor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so powerful too, because it makes me think of, with the visual, when the water spills out, right? Like taking those 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right? It's the same idea of, like, naturally things will deter you. Because that was a thought that I was like, oh, I guess we kind of haven't touched on visualization. What happens when, the acceptance, right? That nothing is a mistake. But what happens when you don't listen to your gut? Because that's in our path as well. There are moments when we are, out of fear, making the choice that's not healthier for ourselves, right? And in a reflection, we can recognize that it was part of the journey, and I had to do that to learn that I deserved more, that I deserved to create more space for myself. And so that's just a little thing that I wanted to add as we were talking about, like, the past reflection going into what's really going to be a lot lighter tone for the remainder of the episode. But we just wanted to share that, like, everybody comes from the darkest moments, right? I think it's the most interesting parts of ourselves. And the more that we can share those little insiders, the more we can really get to understanding that we are all the same. And so now that we can move on to something lighter, I think it would be really, really nice, Nicole, for you to just share a bit of your timeline, right? On, I guess you've already kind of touched a little bit on the recent, right? And like what you've been struggling with and how you have been overcoming that. But can you give us a little bit on the journey of when you started to visualize in general?
So like, well, that's a tough question.
Yeah, that's what we're all about.
So I guess it was probably, I've always been spiritual. I grew up going to a Christian private school. So I was forced to go to church every single Wednesday, chapel time.
Preach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in the right
I don't
place.
know that line.
Me and
You're safe
Kat,
with
me and
us,
Kat
yeah.
are looking at her like,
You're safe
one
with
of
us.
us.
Yeah.
Safe with us, and Pam understands.
Okay.
She can't relate, but she can definitely understand.
Yeah, for sure.
So I always had my personal relationship with God, but like, that's a whole nother topic we can dive into, but I'm going to make it short and sweet as possible. Basically, I was never forced into being a Christian. But like, I guess my parents sending me to a Christian school is kind of like forcing me into being a Christian. But they did give my brother and me the liberty to like think for ourselves, and like they didn't really force anything upon it. Like, we didn't go to church at the weekends. But I would say I probably started getting into spirituality probably when I was 25, currently 31. So that's 6 years, right? I mean, mathing, right? Yeah,
Good math,
6
good
years.
math.
Okay. The math is mathing. So basically, I just had like a friend who, well, my friend from the tea company, she's a very spiritual person, but she was going through her own, spiritual awakening as well. At that time, I don't think we were that close, but I had a friend here who plays soccer with me. She started like doing like she would do pendulum stuff with her mom. And then I'm just someone who's always curious and like open to learning about things. And then when I started getting more in tune like with what she would do and she would start explaining to me, I would start doing my own research. And then I kind of just, I don't know when the turning point was, but I was like, yeah, like I love crystals. I love and like I start to see like the whole energy and how energy is super important and how there's like good and bad energy and karma, and I correlated and kind of formed my own beliefs in a way, because there's always good and bad in everything. So in like religion there's good and bad, spirituality there's good and bad. Like I'm not like woo woo crazy, but like, we do have crystals in our purse. So we do believe in, readings, but I definitely think it's super important to like surround yourself with the right people in any religion or practice, because there are negative entities or whatever you believe in, demons, energies, whatever you want to call it. I think it's all correlated and it's all the same, because everything is connected. But I do definitely think there's bad people out there that are trying to stray you away from you being the light that you're meant to be in this world. So when that started happening, there was a lot of things that happened in my life for me to like kind of turn to spirituality. And then fast forward, like now I'm like, I get readings every now and then. And like, I definitely do believe in the power of prayer, because I do believe in the universe and God. That's my viewpoint. But yeah, like I would say that was when I was 25, I really started getting into it. And then I was like fully in it, like probably 27, 28. And that's when I actually started seeing a lot of big changes, aggressive changes, because shadow work happens. And I just really started honing into all of that. And I think one of the things that was super interesting for me is like I spoke to this guy in Mexico. This is gonna get a little weird, but this
Love weird.
yeah. I spoke to this guy in Mexico who sees the past, present, and future. And he, just the conversation that I had with him, kind of calmed my heart. And from that conversation forward, I understood why I'm here on this earth in this lifetime and what I'm meant to do. And it just combined all of my passions together, because ultimately, what you enjoy doing actually correlates with your purpose in this lifetime. So it really helped me understand what I wanted to get into, or what I love to do, basically, and how I could use or do all those things in order to be who I'm supposed to be in this lifetime. So like understanding that, I think, was a very powerful and pivotal moment in my life to move forward with more grace and in everything that I do. And now is like when the real heavy hitting like healing journey starts, because now it's like I understand like the more you heal, the harder it is. It's kind of like that analogy of the glass and the water. And it's so crazy, but like I probably have like crying session like once a week, because it's freeing, it's great, but also it's
That's crazy.
We're all insane.
Well, no, I gotta go back. I need an appointment right now.
But yeah, I would say that was like a very pivotal moment when I was 25, and then now I'm just full blown in it, and full blown in like, okay, cool. What are we doing today? What are we crying about today? What are we healing today? But I think like when you start understanding yourself a lot more, you start understanding all the things that you did as a child up until now, and like how what you're doing in your day-to-day life actually matters in order for you to live your truest and highest version of yourself. So, yeah.
I have to say, I think that part of all of that, right? Even the point that you said that once you really were in it spiritually,
Mhm.
things started changing for you. I feel like the mind is a really powerful thing, and so that's why religion and spirituality and overall, for me, like you said, there's goods and bads to both.
Mm-hmm.
But when it becomes really powerful for people and why they lean to it into a specific religion or spiritual practice is because then it's almost like an outlet for, I'm going to focus on this spiritual philosophy or religion or whatever, but now they're applying their mindset, right? And almost all of them have an overarching, they're all pretty similar, right? It's doing good for the world in order for you to do good for yourself, and a lot of it is also trying to find your place in society and in your community. And so when people get to that point, I think it's just something that helps them break that barrier. So a lot of the times, even when we're looking at trying to heal,
Yeah.
right? A lot of that, we get stuck in those points of wanting to stay in a cycle of self-blame. So once that crying starts happening, it's because then you start feeling like, I can't believe I've been this mean to myself.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've allowed myself to think so horribly for so long. And then you start apologizing to yourself. And those connections that start happening, because if you think about even Christianity, right? The whole idea is God is forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
He forgives everything. Like, tell your sins to God, have your relationship. Some religions do it differently. But the idea is that you release all of those negatives. You give yourself that grace, and you allow yourself, like, okay, I'm human. I made a mistake, and that's okay. But I just have to learn from it and move on. And I think that's where it becomes really powerful, no matter what avenue you choose, because then that's where it's just you get to that moment where it's that idea, right? You're accepting God or whatever deity that you have, but it's also you're accepting all that, all those parts of yourself, going back to that shadow work, understanding that it's like, you needed to see this. You needed, sometimes it gets bad, but then once you have that realization of, I needed to see how ugly I could get so that I can learn and be like, I don't like that person of myself. I don't like that version.
Yeah.
I need to do better. And then you start getting better. And then that's when all of these beautiful opportunities start coming, because then you put in the work, right? You're realizing staying in such a negative headspace is what is creating those barriers, right? Staying in something that is so restrictive. And I feel like recently I've been hearing a lot this thought of hate, right? Hate and negative, it takes up a lot of your energy. And so if you're focused so much on this empty cup and complaining about the empty cup, you're never ever trying to figure out how to fill it.
Yeah.
And so you waste all that energy. You're so tired. And now once you get to the point of like, okay, I could spend all this time complaining, or I could just go out there and just fill up my damn cup.
Mm-hmm.
And then you finally get there. And so I think, that, like, that part that you spoke about, especially the crying, I think it's really important to acknowledge too, because as Inside Out has shown us, we didn't have these movies when we were little, but repressing emotions is not good. They all serve their purpose. And so once you allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you need to feel, you don't stay in it, right? You don't stay in there for too long, because too much of anything is bad.
Right.
But you honor it. I think that's important. You honor that emotion, you let it do its job, and then you go back. And it's a fluctuation. It's like how we've mentioned before on our podcast, right? There's seasons. There might be seasons where you might feel like you have to honor a specific emotion over the other one. But at the end of the day, as long as you're realizing and making that recognition of, I'm growing from this, and it's hard, but we are taking that next step. We are doing a little bit better,
And you said when you were 28, something really violently shook that for you. And it's funny because when I was 28, something shook very violently for me as well. Like, and I'm told, and I was even thinking about how, that when I was 28, that year, honestly, years before it, the universe was telling me things and I was ignoring it, and it hit its pivotal. It's like, that's it. I'm done with you. When I was 28, and, and that was a really, I say it lovingly because I wouldn't take it back. But when I was in that space, I was terrified for my life. I was terrified of what I knew, like, meaning I doubted what I knew. I doubted everything about what I knew about my family, what I knew about my friends, what I knew about my life and my direction, where it's going. And it was such a painful time that I think I really had to sit in it to, I wasn't friends with myself at that point, not at all. And I really had to look at myself, and unfortunately I was my worst enemy. Like, I'm talking about really aggressive, antagonistic enemy. And it was me now being 29 and forward, because I'm turning 30 this year.
That's right. Golden birthday, no?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yes, it is.
Love that.
Yeah.
30 on
And
the 30th.
Woo!
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
and I think like I am I am better friends with myself because of how much broke for me at that point. How much literally tore itself from like my soul. Like, that's how I was feeling. And these events were, I think, honestly, really challenging to not just like, oh my God, like, who am I in my 20s? But like, who was I when I was 6? I was like really like, and I guess not in a bad way, because thankfully going forward in those years, I was really thinking about that person as like, oh my God, like, I've just blamed you for so many things, and you're 6 or you're 8, and you were just doing the best you could with the tools you had, or the tools that really, like, unfortunately the people around you didn't have. So how could you know any better? And like, unfortunately, that's what it took to kind of really become my own friend. It was really unraveling. And I definitely, because it was funny that you said before, like, so this is going to be a therapy session, and I laughed because it is, but not because we know better, because we share the same pain. And it's like, it's really a therapy of like, getting it out there.
Yeah.
And really, as this whole episode is about, really honoring the process and the journey. Really what this whole podcast is about, honestly.
And I think that's beautiful, and I think it's about honoring like who you truly are to the core, because like I think we are our worst enemies, and are like, I'm Nicole. I'm a perfectionist.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
And one of the things I struggled with, which is part of like my traumatic, I guess, experiences throughout, like not in my home life so much, but it was more on my outside experiences, was the feeling of not being enough. So that would show up in all of my, whether it be romantic relationships or me trying out for a soccer team and like the coach not playing me, and me being like, what do I gotta do? Gotta be faster? And then like now looking back at it, it's because I had that limiting belief that I wasn't enough to be a part of the soccer team I want to be a part of, that I wasn't enough to be in the relationship that I wanted to be. So like, I'll settle for like shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think when you realize what that is also a very huge moment for yourself to not only apologize to yourself for being so mean all these years and being like, no, like, you are enough, like hug the little girl inside of you and being like, you are enough. Or, and then for the perfectionist side is like understanding that nothing is perfect. And especially in this human world, nothing is going to go the way it's going the way it should go, but not the way that you thought it would go.
Yep.
And that's the beautiful part about it, right? So I just think like once you understand your pain, it's easier to like grow from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's what the question was, right, Kat?
Yeah, I'm like, how did we get here?
So yeah, the whole part was the journey, so we got somewhere. I want to talk about the Greeks for a second.
The Greeks.
You got to bring them out. So because we're talking about sharing pain, right? And I think how many times I think about the Roman Empire, right? So like, I love thinking back to our roots, because we learn everything now from this like very scientific perspective of things that humans have been doing by nature since the beginning of time. And I think of the Greeks because I think of how once a year we have the celebration of Dionysus when we get together, right? The entire community gets together and they gather at the amphitheater and they, for 3 days, celebrate and party. But it's a 3-day process. And the first day is about mourning and catharsis, right? So the idea is that we gather to watch the most tragic tale ever told in history up until this point, right? The entire point of it is a festival to top what was produced the year before. And the catharsis is an opportunity for everybody all at once together to release what they are not able to do, right? Because in society, and in that society, right, at the times where you're creating all 3 meals, you are building your own home, you're building your family's home, you're bearing the children of your neighbors, like you are taking care of everything. So of course it's a go, 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 go mentality. So that one day a year is everything for them. It's like an encasing of their spirituality. And that's where we're coming from, right? Like those are our ancestral roots, right? If we're not Greek, it happened in one society to the next, because again, it's the evolution of our free time, right? And now we're at this place where we have the luxury of being able to go to therapy and to be able to sit down with friends and talk through and work through these things. And like, what a blessing that is. But we're oversaturated. And so we are like statistically sadder and more depressed than ever before, especially those of us living in the first world. And so I think it's what makes this topic so important, because we lose sight of ourselves and we lose sight of what we have to be grateful for that's around us, how much opportunity we have in front of us just for being like, just for living the life that we have. With as much as we don't have, we have more than enough. And it's that transition of mentality, you know? And so for you, it was 25. For me, it was 21. And I've already shared this on the episode, Pam and I both, right? Our struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts, right? And for all of us, it comes at different times in our lives. And for me, it was like, that was my lowest point. And that's where I had to get to realize that I needed to create a vision for my life, you know, and that I was walking around without one, because I was terrified of the person that I wanted to be. And I was terrified of letting anybody know that I wanted to be that person, you know? And so when I just decided to take a step and do something for myself, it was terrifying. And I lost a lot of people, but I lost people that I didn't need in my life at that moment. And as we always like to mention, like for those of you who are listening, that's part of the journey, you know, is like accepting that, like part of those falls out of the cup, because I think it's a beautiful analogy that we've used today, is it's going to be people, you know, and it's going to be relationships, and it's going to be career, and it's going to be love, you know. You're never going to be able to make the call, but that's why visualization is so important, because it keeps you on the goal, right? It keeps you on the version of yourself that you want to be, so that when the obstacles come, you can understand that they're to build your character. You know, they're not to tear you down. They are never to tear you down. And they're a response to your fear. It's only really scary, and it feels like a really, really big problem, because you're afraid that when you get through it, you're going to be stronger. But you don't know how much stronger you're going to be, because you don't know how hard it's going to be.
Yeah, one drop in a cup is not intimidating at all. But like it on the brim, you're like,
Like, how did I get here?
oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Here. Yeah, I could lose this all.
Yeah.
And it's not really like that at all.
No, it's preparing you for what you're visualizing. So like, and I think that's something that the universe always does, right? Like, it's like, okay, you want this? You really want this? Okay, cool. We're going to prepare you for you to be in that vibration to have what you want. But like right now, you're not receiving it because you're not ready to receive it. And I think that's also something really important to always remember. Like, you don't have it right now because you're not ready for it. So
yeah, and that's a good testament too, because we haven't touched on reaching for goals before you're ready.
Yeah.
So thank you for recognizing that, because that's another part of the process, you know, that like it seems like an obstacle, but it's also how you have to do it, especially finding a job today.
It's rough out here.
Girl, yeah. Oh my goodness. Like, how many times you have to cast your net over and over and over. The first interview, the second interview, the third interview, the no, and then having to start back from scratch and trusting that you have to keep putting the applications out. It's a very real process, and I know so many people who have struggled and are currently struggling with that. And what a great reminder, like it's part of the process and it's getting you towards what you are meant to be doing. And I think that's a great segue to the final kind of question discussion for us for today, which is really more so talking about our toolkit, right? Like we always build our little box of things that we can pull from and grab and kind of takeaways, right? If maybe you feel like it's something that we've already talked about today that you just really want to highlight and make known, like this is the best thing that works for me. But I think give us a couple of practical tools, right? Like for you and the way that you see visualization and manifestation working right now. Like what are you kind of obsessed with right now?
Okay, so what I'm obsessed with is I actually love a good gratitude practice. So I love like tying in my manifestations with gratitude. So which I need to be a little more strict on that because I've fallen off to another path. I don't do it every day like I used to. But I would literally every day in the morning, my morning practice would be to write 20 things that I'm grateful for and kind of tie in like manifestation with that. So like I'll be kind of like, oh, I'm so grateful that the universe is attracting in opportunities and people that serve my highest good. So like you're opening yourself up to receiving certain things that align with who you are, right? So like just tying in, being grateful for where you're at, but also, hey, I kind of want to get this soon. So tying that in, I think that is a very powerful tool for myself. And then another thing that I did this year, I did what is it called? A visual,
Manifestation board?
yeah,
A
a
vision
vision
board?
board.
Vision board.
I was like a visual
Right.
chart, or
Yeah,
like what
that
is it
makes more
called?
sense.
A vision board. And then my friend Dakota, the owner of the sea, she actually told me because she's also into like all of that stuff, and she does breath work too. She does a lot of things. Dakota's a very good friend. So she told me she's like, oh, like you should do with your vision board, you should record yourself, like if you already have it in the future and kind of like listen to that while you're looking at the vision board. So I did that. And then I have the vision board like right by my bed. And then I listen to the audio like once a month because I was doing it for like every day, and after I got a little tired of like listening to my voice. So I just do it like once a month. But it's crazy because on that vision board, I actually have the job that I was manifesting right now. So it's working.
Yes.
So we're excited about all the other things working on that board. But I have a very heavy manifestation board, so I understand things take time.
Yeah.
But I think those are two super powerful tools for me. And then I'm an advocate for movement. So I love tying in a good yoga and meditation session. I think meditation is so powerful, and then I also do prayer as well. So yeah, those are the tools that I use.
I have a quick follow up. How did it
Yeah.
feel after? Because you said that you recorded yourself in the future as if you got it. When you got that job and you heard that recording, like, how did you feel?
Oh my God. So it's funny because I'm naturally a clown. So, so like it was like a very like, hey girl, like this is me. Like you know that relationship that you've been manifesting? Like, don't even worry about it. Like, I don't know why you were so worried. You know, like it's so funny when you
Bestie.
listen. Yeah, it was like your bestie talking to you. But it really it calmed me because it's like, okay, cool. Like we're gonna be good. We're gonna be okay. Because especially in like low moments,
Mm-hmm.
it's like those low moments when you're crying, you're like, I like why is none of this happening, or why am I not receiving it? And then like having that there and listening to it after like would calm me down, or like being like, okay, you're still on track, you're on the right path. Like it's not happening right now because first of all, you manifested a really big order, Nicole. So like the universe is gonna take a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
to like get that whipped up for you. But second, it's kind of like, you're gonna receive it. It reassures that you're gonna receive it when you need to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think my don't do vision boards, as everybody knows. So it's such an, I love hearing about the way that they are just such a powerful tool, you know? And then the more that I hear it, the more I'm like, oh, it's probably a sign that I need to get back into that creative juice because I know that there's a lot of value in it. For me, I would say that my biggest tool right now that I've been practicing is winning the morning.
Oh,
So
Nice.
yeah, I realized a lot of things. I've been doing a lot of reflection on my upbringing, right? Like my nature versus nurture, and like how can I break that cycle, and recognizing that I'm the one who breaks the cycle, and it's a choice that I have to wake up every day and make. And it was the realization that I had no morning routine. And when you're really seeking purpose and you start to analyze those little things that you do every day, I realize that I have no discipline in my morning routine because I never grew up with a morning routine. You know, my mom was a single mom, and she did the most that she could, but it was like she was always running behind, you know, because she was doing the job of two parents. And so my morning routine was very quick, you know, like I was being woken up pretty much the moment that I had to get to school. And then I would get to school and I would eat like a bar or something on the way to school, you know, and then little by little things would get better, right? I was in sports, so I had to be there in the morning for something, and like things started to shift, but it was never ingrained in me, right? It was more situational. So you think you have something, and then the moment that that sport is over, you lose it completely.
Mhm.
Right. And so transfer that to being an adult, everything is situational again. I never had a conventional job. So a morning routine never really mattered, you know? And the best was when I was a manager at the tea company
Mhm.
because I was working early mornings. So at least I was out and about. That was like one of my first jobs like that. And so now that I have, I think people know I've transitioned into a new job, and this job really prioritizes people who live the lifestyle that I have. And it's given me a lot of clarity and the opportunity to look at my habits and recognize that as many things as I've done and I can reflect and be proud of myself about, it's also time to make a change. And so focusing on my morning routine and making those choices, and hearing people say so many times you have to give yourself that time in the morning because chances are you won't have that time in the day, right? And everybody stresses the morning, the morning, the morning. You have to make it happen in the morning because you get lost in all of your tasks and things that you have to do for others, right? Or to make money, and you end up not getting it. And since I've been practicing that, I've just noticed how much more confidence I have throughout the day. You know, I feel definitely feel grounded, you know, by giving myself that time. And it's something as simple as, uh, girl, it's something as simple as doing a face mask, you know, like
Mhm.
every Tuesday because I deserve it. I deserve to have a routine to look forward to. And I deserve to do something that it's just one Tuesday, but do that every day for a month. And my skin is completely different, you know? And it's like those little things that you can kind of trickle in, and understanding that too, right? That it's a trickle, that it's not like an overnight thing. Cause everybody knows my mentality on making lists, right? And creating schedules that are very meticulous, and how it's a recipe for disaster because that's just not how we work as humans. And when we try to set ourselves up like a robot, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. And so one little thing, you know, that you can add and spread it out through the week or through the month, and you don't recognize how you are changing yourself every single day. And so that's my biggest tool that I could offer, because for so long I envied and was kind of a little ticked off at people who would constantly talk about the importance of a morning routine because I just could not lock it down. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And now I recognize that it's okay to be like the majority of group think, and that there's reason, you know, and that people only share from experience and wisdom. And I'm humbling myself and recognizing and seeing the benefit of that and reaping it too. Like,
If you think about it, a lot of those like success, how to be successful, how to be like the rich and wealthy, the first thing they say is the morning.
Mhm.
You
mhm,
know, to wake up early, get all the things that you need to get done because then the day will just take over, you know, and in those, even if it's just 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, it's that extra time that you're giving yourself to give yourself an advantage and just prep for stuff. And I feel like for me, it's kind of similar, right? It's not as structured yet in terms of a vision board or like a daily morning routine. But I am trying to think of different ways of viewing how I would normally see things in my 20s, right? And it's now about being more intentional, not just with time, but also with money, like viewing certain aspects as a way of like investing in myself, right? It's that self-care. It's that if I want to be in this place, I have to feel a certain way. I have to make sure that I am the one, like, no one else is going to do this for me. I have to do it for myself. So if I want to make sure that I'm eating a really good, healthy meal and not spending so much money, I have to be on top of making sure that I make that food for me, And so I've been really um, leaning into meal prepping just for myself, just because there's a lot of things I feel like as a Capricorn, I've gotten the
Only Capricorns look at themselves that way. Everyone
I
else
feel
loves
like,
you.
yeah, like the academics, the career, like we got that. That's something that's easy. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but with things like food, right? Like movement, those are things that are a lot harder for me in my mind to quantify. And so those are a lot of things that require a lot of self-discipline, right? A lot of my own willingness to do that I'm not used to. I'm so used to, no, you just do this whatever structured thing, and once you do it, you automatically see like a result, right? Or something like that. It's very easy to um kind of calculate that change versus something that is like health, like movement, that takes a lot more faith, right? Because part of that discipline is knowing and understanding and believing that as long as you show up, the change will come eventually. That's something that's really hard for me. And so for my whole life, it's always been, when you're, especially for us, I feel like the 90s, 90s heroin chic, all that kind of, advertising and stuff like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and the way that
Very
women were
so
talked about.
toxic.
Mhm.
So toxic.
The way that women were talked about, the way like weight loss programs were put onto us. Even when I would go to doctors when I'm like 12, I'm like, I don't know anything about nutrition. They don't teach me this in school. And my parents are, they're immigrant parents. They're working. They don't have the time to show me this. And all of a sudden I'm to blame, right? And it's almost kind of going back to that idea of like, look, you were enough then. That wasn't your fault. That was the fault of everybody else and putting so much weight and pressure on you. But now it's understanding like you can either sit here and complain about it or you can do something about it, right? And so now it's like getting into a generic routine of like what makes me feel good? What can I do to help me get there? I can do this like if I'm in a place where I'm trying to save up for a home, very difficult in these times, but we're trying to do it, and also live a little bit healthier. And so one of the things that I constantly hear, right, in terms of for you was the morning, it's the whole idea of it's 80-20, right? It's 80% food, 20% movement. And for the longest time, like I feel like I've gotten the movement part down. There are times I'll have long seasons of active movement, some seasons of long breaks, but I've never been able to really tackle the nutrition part of it. And so now I'm trying to be, give myself some grace, be flexible with it, but also understanding like if I want to get these meals done, I can do it. I can cook something healthy for myself. I just have to make sure that I prep it. And so now I've kind of established a weekly routine, where in the morning I know what kind of breakfast that I can make myself that I'll enjoy and will get the protein intake that I need. I'll have like my lunch and my dinners ready. I'll know what it is that I'm going to cook in the week. I just go at I love grocery shopping. I love cooking. So now it's just making sure that I hold myself accountable to do it. And then in the meal prepping, it also gives me the flexibility of I don't have to cook every single day. Like I'll have these meals, they're ready to go. And that's something that was so hard for me before. And now I feel like I've established a really good routine and dishes that I've sort of leaned to, and understanding better more about nutrition and what goes into those calories, what goes into the ingredients in what I'm buying, and like being very careful with that, and just even just feeling, right, how that's affected me in only like a month, of just doing this. Like I feel so much better. I feel like my stomach doesn't feel as bloaty, I just feel good. And even transitioning back, right, when I feel like, because I understand for it to be sustainable, I can't always be so strict. But even when I go back and I have some of those foods, like when I was on my graduation trip, what am I going to do? We're out, we're having a meal, and I did order something that's a little more greasy. It's so interesting to see how that affects my body now, right? And I notice those changes because I've been able to stick so long with somewhat eating as clean as I can. And now when I eat those things, I feel it and I understand how that affects me now. And so now I can make better choices and feel good about myself, knowing that Do you want to feel this way? No. Okay. But what can we do that kind of like meets in the middle? We'll get you that craving and we'll still make you feel good the next day. And so now I feel like I've been able to transform my relationship with food a little bit. I feel like I still have a little bit of ways to go. But that routine, kind of listening sometimes to what those, what are they called? I wouldn't call them cliches, I guess, but we take them as cliches, but they're rooted in truth,
Yeah.
and kind of experimenting with them. That's how I've kind of treated it. It's an experiment. Like so many, like how you said, so many people say this, so many people do this. Why not try it, right? Like why
Right.
not do and go work over there? I have no excuse. Why not try it? Let's see if it works. It works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And now I know it works.
Yeah, I feel like the running theme of this episode, aside from visualization, is like consistency eliminates fear.
Mhm.
Yes.
Like, and I think consistency also requires not thinking, and not thinking eliminates fear.
Let me tell you, I have had to do that to myself. I've had to talk to myself and be like, okay, I know that I've done this, that I go on autopilot, and in me trying to decide should I cook at home or go to McDonald's, I end up going to McDonald's, getting the food. So let me just autopilot myself to the go home part and cook it and spend that whole time in my mind arguing. But while I'm doing that, I'm doing the cooking. And by the time I'm done, I'm like,
Yes.
damn, I spent all this time arguing, but here we are.
Yeah.
Here's the food.
Only one option.
Mhm.
I love that, Pam. That's awesome.
I love that you said something about eliminating fear, because one thing that's kind of been a tool, it's not a very good tool, but it's been putting worth in surviving really terrible things. That has eliminated fear for me. Terrible things that are not a danger to your life, but are very difficult and not what you have experience with. Last month I went to Hawaii and I had a wonderful time. And I was very privileged to, stay with my friend, and he was working, and him and his wife were like, but, we want you to still like go out and explore. So like, we'll drop you off. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you guys think? And they're like, well, would you like to know what we would do? And I'm like, sure. And they tell me like, well, there's this park. It's a great hike. It's not too bad. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Like, and I just like, all right, like I'm in Hawaii, I was definitely entering that mindset of like, just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Don't think about it.
So you got a point.
Yeah. And I was terrified. My armpits were sweating the entire time. I was like getting ready that day and I was like, should I tell them that I changed my mind? No, don't tell them.
There's no going back.
There's no going back. Don't do it. And I was literally arguing with myself the entire time, but I got dropped off at the park.
There we go.
Yes. And it was, I have to say, I'm a Floridian, so elevation and me have not had a thorough relationship. So I was terrified. I was like, and I kept arguing with myself, even on the hike. And I was like, should I go back? Should I go back?
That's a great distraction, actually.
Just argue with yourself as you take every step.
Yeah. Don't think about it and argue with yourself. Two things in my toolkit that we're actually realizing we kind of all have. It was like, it ended up being, and this is funny because I was in the beginning of the hike, it was very mild. But it was July and it had been raining for the past couple of days. And I didn't know what that meant because I'm a Floridian and I don't hike. But when I was on the trail,
You learned.
and I learned not great to hike when it's been raining after the fact. And it actually started raining again while I was in like the muddiest, tree branchy, very steep part. And I was like, I'm going to die. I am going to die. And then I kept speaking to myself and I was like, but it's okay, but it's okay, but it's okay. I'm going to die, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I sounded ridiculous. And there were points in the hike where I would get to a safe spot, or at least where I felt less threatened. And I would look back and I was like, wow, like a couple of minutes ago I was there and I really didn't think I would be here. I took pictures like of when I of terrains and I was like, I finished that. I finished that. And it was just, the first like quarter of the hike. And I think for the middle it was the worst part. The path got very narrow. It was basically a cliff. There was a drop off right next to me and it was wet and I was like slipping and sliding and I was so terrified. And I remember, thankfully, it was a Monday, so there weren't a lot of people, but the park itself is pretty popular. So there were a few people on the trail. And I, of course, was like, I never thought about bothering someone, but I got so terrified that I was like, the next person that crosses me, I'm asking them, like, how do I get out of here? And I, even asked a person like, so is this the Mystiques Valley? And he's like, yeah, you're on the right path. Don't worry. It gets better further down. And I was like, okay, because it gets worse where I came from. And he was like, oh, okay, good to know. Must be money, huh? And I was like, yes, because I had my hiking boots were like covered and they're high tops. They covered my ankles and there was still mud all up the back of them, on my ankles, on my leggings. I was so scared.
Wow.
And thankfully he was right.
Yeah, Hawaii hiking is no joke. Some of the
Nope.
most dangerous trails in the world are there.
Yep. Yeah, I saw a rescue helicopter twice. Twice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
But did the sun come out?
yes. The whole
it at the
trail.
end?
The whole trail was sun rain, sun rain, sun rain, sun rain. And I actually got, which is a terrible photo, which is the theme of my Hawaii photos actually.
Mhm.
Oh, we
But-
know. There's
yes.
I
no
know.
food. What'd you eat?
We don't
She
know.
didn't.
We don't know.
She didn't.
We ate nothing. There was
Clearly.
no food travel
Perfect.
pics. I failed Nat Geo, all of it. But
She was so in the moment.
I mean, I was terrified for my life. And I took this photo of this like just green opening. And it was, I feel like the only photo that I took in like that middle section because it was so breathtaking. And I even took the photo and I looked at it and I was like, it's not the same. It was just looking at it and I was like, oh my God, like how beautiful it is and how like lush it is and how open it is. Like the entire hike was basically bordering the valley. And that's basically the best shot that I had of like the treetops of that valley. And it was just amazing. And then I remember thinking to myself, I remember thinking like, death should not be an option right now, but it really feels like it's close because I was just so scared. But I was like, this is such a beautiful place. And I really never thought that, I actually didn't think. I just kept on telling myself, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. And then I said, well, gotta move because there's mosquitoes. And then I
yeah.
kept finished. And the guy was right. It did get dry. It was, it was still pretty high and like a weird like sideways trail because it was dry and very rocky,
Mhm.
but it was just like finishing it was probably one of my proudest moments. And I felt no fear. I felt so happy with myself. And I said, even leaving the park and having finished it, I kept having conversations with myself like, why do you have these feelings? Why do you, like, when you're home, why do you give in to these types of people? And I was like just unraveling things that came from nothing having to do with Hawaii, Mystiques Valley, nothing of that. But it really spurred on because I think I realized I just did something that I was terrified of and I survived it. So why am I so afraid to stand up for myself or speak on behalf of something or not do, things that I don't want to do? And the adrenaline was pumping. my hormones were active. I don't know. All the chemistry sets were going off. And I think that was definitely a click because I'm not suggesting, do it every day because that's kind of unsustainable, but I'm definitely suggesting do it at least periodically because I think you forget the possibilities of even your own body, your
Mhm.
own mind, when you don't challenge it in small and very I think, tempered ways, and places where you don't know, like, if it's like you've never experienced it, right?
Mhm.
I definitely had never experienced that ever. And I would not experience that in Florida. So I was like, I should do it. I should do it. I should do it, but completely terrified. But I just kept on saying, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I did it by myself. Ooh, key ingredient there. I did it by myself. And I remember people telling me, like, you shouldn't have done that. That's very dangerous. And I was like, yeah, but I did. And I get to say that I did, which was very powerful.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great tool because coming back even and having such a wonderful, wonderful time in Hawaii, it was coming back and having a very newfound gratitude for myself. My friends over there had not seen me in like 8 years. So seeing them and hearing about my life too was a great coaching session of like, and a great outer reflection of how much has happened. And combined with all of that, yeah, doing something that was terrifying felt really good amongst the comfort of like your friends and appreciation and gratitude. It was such a great bow, you know? I think in a weird sense, talking to yourself is also a great tool in the form of, sometimes it's arguing. Sometimes it's just speaking to yourself and how beautiful something is around you and how magnificent. And sometimes it's talking yourself out and away from something, like I was mentioning before, which I did warn you guys I was getting ahead of myself because I'm going to bring it back here. Talking to yourself and reminding yourself, this anxiety about the person that you're talking to, they don't think that. You're putting that out there. And you're putting that out there because you're scared. It's okay to be scared. These are literally circles that I will talk to myself to, that I've learned now to move away from ugly thoughts that would just take over. And I would just sit with and not do anything with bad things. And now speaking to myself and saying, you're creating a reality that doesn't exist. I know why you're doing this. You're not dumb. You're not stupid. You're not, any of the negative thing. I know you're doing this because it comes from a past experience or it comes from fear, but this is not that experience and you're just afraid, and it's okay to be afraid, but no, nothing is going on. So those type of measured exercises have been definitely that third tool, with me, because we really do need to not only get really comfortable with our shadow, but really comfortable with who we are day to day and how we react to things. How we feel and how we react are rooted in some of the shadow aspects of ourselves, and sometimes it's just rooted in how you feel that day and understanding this is not a normal day. I just feel this way because this or XYZ happened. It's okay. I'll come back to this tomorrow, etc. Really talking to yourself with patience, with grace is also part of it. Sometimes it's an argument, and that's okay because nothing is perfect, including the relationship that you have with yourself. But it doesn't mean that because you spoke to yourself one way, you can never come back to the softness, to the gentleness, to the grace, like any relationship. And understanding that it is a relationship. The most important one you have. So that has been 3 of the most important tools in my kit because they really bleed into everything else, They bleed into, and actually the other day I was thinking to myself, like, God, I really don't want to be in this meeting. and then I remembered, like, man, if I was in Hawaii right now, I would be like, I'd be hiking, or I'd be like going back to Don Quixote or something. I don't know. And I actually, really appreciate that, I can think about those experiences, that I do have that behind me. And I'm not just this person sitting in a meeting doing whatever passive expectation, weirdly enough, right? That has been great fuel for keeping me focused, keeping me growing, keeping me motivated, and keeping me into manifesting more, from these amazing possibilities that I already made possible once so I could do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a full box, ladies. I think there's a lot that our listeners can source from. And, I think take what you need, take what works for you, and trial and error, right? I hope that we said something that was new and like sparks interest in you to try. And I just want to give a huge thank you again to Nicole. Thank you so much for agreeing to join our craziness and get real visceral and real with us. Thank you for sharing everything that you shared.
We loved having you.
Thank you for having me. And that was such a powerful story. Like it really touched me. And I think another important takeaway from your story is like it just sheds light on how important our relationship with ourselves is. Cause like we get into this world by ourselves and we leave by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So once you have that fully, once you're besties with yourself, you're gonna be able to do anything and attract exactly what you want into your life. So thank you for sharing that. That was really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you for opening the playing field. Honestly, it wouldn't have happened
Yeah.
without you. So yeah, thank you.
And
I
a
love your
great way
podcast.
to, oh, thank you. Love that. A great way to kind of circle it back because the title of this episode is called Focus and Flow.
Focus and
And I
flow.
think we did an amazing job of doing just that today, right? Like the focus was always about how to envision yourself in a better place than where you are now, how that journey never ends, but finding those moments, right, to get back to your focus, right? And why you wanted it in the first place. So I think now is the perfect time for us to end with some wisdom from the universe and our guide, Pam. So I'll bring it over to you to lead us in our tarot reading.
Yeah. So, first of all, Nicole, thank you so much for bringing again this topic. And I think it's really funny because this episode, I was like, you know what? I feel because Kat had showed us right what it was that you wanted to talk about, and I just had a feeling of I want to bring out my oracle cards. I haven't really used them before in any episodes. So this is the first time that I use them. And I knew that I wanted to use them. My oracle cards are the Moonology one. And I was trying to think about which tarot deck I wanted to pair it with. And then I decided to go with this tarot deck that my cousin gave me actually from Peru called Tarot del Sol. And it's just so funny that this whole episode, right? We're talking about manifestation. We're talking about our relationship with ourselves. We're talking about shadow work and how you need to go hand in hand with it, right? Almost like a mentor. And here we have the sun and the moon. And on the back of each of these, of their cover, the sun says, El sol brilla para todos. So the sun shines for everyone. And on the back of the cover for the Moonology Oracle deck is Let the Moon Be Your Guide. So I think it's the perfect combo deck that that came out from today. And if you think about it, the moon is a reflection of the sun, so like even though we see them as two different entities, really they're just one and the same. And I feel like it's really similar to how we've kind of described, right, ourselves, the relationship that you have. And as we were going through the episode, I was trying to think about what it is that I could ask the tarot deck, because some of the things that were floating on my mind were kind of things that I've already asked the tarot already. And so, what I decided that I would ask the cards today is how can we better develop, right? What are some things that can help us better develop that relationship with with the shadow self? Because I think that's something we've very highlighted and emphasized that it is important and it's an important tool to hold into your arsenal. And so, what are some of the ways that we can help create that bridge, help create that connection, lose some of that animosity towards it and some of that fear? Because a lot of it is also, as we've talked about, comes from fear. And so let's see what it has to say. Okay, these two want to come out. So I'm going to take the Caballero de Oros first and then the Reina de Oros afterwards. And also take an oracle card. So the Caballero de Oros should be this deck's version of the Knight of Pentacles. Just can you look it up for me really quick while I shuffle these? And then the Reina de Oros would be the Queen of Pentacles. And at the bottom of the deck, we have the Ten of Swords. So, Pentacle energy is the more slow moving energy, right? But it's also the materialistic manifestation in the tarot deck. It represents all the material things in this world. And the knight, out of all of the knights, the Knight of Pentacles is the slowest one, right? It's usually not depicted moving in action. Usually he's very still. Like in this depiction, this guy is wearing a cape. The cape is not moving. There's no air flowing through that cape, right? He's sitting there on the horse. The horse is still. He's carrying this pentacle in front of him. And then we have the Queen of Pentacles. She almost kind of looks like a depiction of the Virgin Mary, almost the way that she has her here with a cloak, and she's looking at this pentacle, and she has these, I'm assuming, rays of light that are going above her. You get it?
Nicole is loving this. I can
Mhm.
tell. Taking it all in.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So in Spanish, okay, I'll read it and I'll try
I
to
love
do a
it.
translation. So, Caballero de Oros, energía masculina, joven y confiable. A diferencia de sus símiles, el Caballero de Oros avanza de manera lento por segura. So, again, this is masculine energy. It's also young and almost like he's very confident in himself, right? And it does mention the fact that he is a lot more slow, but he's in this deck, they describe it that he's slow because he's confident. He feels secure. No actúa rápido. Su objetivo es actuar bien. Su personalidad es dependiente y aterrizada y su mentalidad metódica y objetiva. So the reason why he's not moving fast is because his goal isn't to move fast, right? Like all the other horses, it's to move with intention. It's to move well. And his personality is very grounded, right? His mentality is methodical. He's objective driven, goal driven. Está pendiente de los resultados y del bienestar económico o material. Es un gran trabajador, aunque por momentos puede parecer materialista o desconectado de sus emociones. Conceptos clave: personalidad metódica, dependiente, trabajador, lento pero seguro, confiable. So it's the idea that he is a hard worker, right? You might kind of like the bad side of this. Some people might think that he's materialistic, but really he's just somebody who is understanding, right, of what it takes to get the results that he wants. And so when it comes, it's almost like people might think that he's so disconnected from it, but I feel like it's this energy of, I know that I worked so hard for this and I deserve this. And I think that that kind of matches really well with masculine energy, because even if you compare to how women and men, right, I feel like women were more inclined to the imposter syndrome, not trying to dismiss men at all. I'm like, they have it too. But the way that they're kind of raised is that they're not really forced to question their actions. I feel like a lot of what I hear all the time, boys will be boys, but for girls it's like, watch how you talk, watch how you eat, make sure you're not doing this, make sure you're not doing that, you have to help with this, you have to help with that. It's a lot more structured for us. And so I feel that a lot of the times we'll be more inclined to question some of the things that we have either manifested or that we've worked on, or especially things that come out of nowhere and we feel that we're undeserving. Whereas masculine, it's, you feel very reassured of yourself. Like a lot of the times men will go through with the mentality of, I worked for this, of course I deserve this. And I think in terms of building that relationship with your shadow self, maybe for us, right, some of us that are listening and that are here sitting in this room, it's acknowledging and stepping into that power of acknowledging your self-worth, right, acknowledging what it is that you deserve and why it is. And I think most importantly too, because he is somebody who is very methodical. And so kind of like how we've mentioned in this episode, everything happens for a reason. And when something doesn't work out the way that it is, think about why, right? Be analytical about it. break it down. Is it because I'm not ready to receive it? Is it because there's a lesson that I have to learn? Is it because there's something else that I have to do? Is it because maybe this really isn't what's meant for me, right? Do I really want this? And so break it down in that way and take your time, and the time will be well worth it, if you do it intentionally, right? Because that's what all this card is about. And so then that one is followed with the Queen of Pentacles, Reina de Oros. Here it says, energía femenina, madura y responsable. La Reina de Oros está completamente consciente de su entorno. Reconoce las actitudes necesarias para mantenerlo en orden. So this is the feminine energy, but she's also mature, right? She's also very responsible. She's very conscious of like what it is that she needs to keep things done. So pretty much similar to what Kat and I were saying of like, we recognize now, right, the power of, you know, the 80-20, or the power of morning routines. You know what it is that you need to do to get something done now. That you're in this place of, or you can be in this place of knowing and learning about that part of yourself, right? This is how that shadow can get you there. It's helping you to kind of filter what are the steps to get you where you need to be, especially in the speed that you're looking for, right? But that takes learning, that takes time to understand that and see how you react to it, right? How your body reacts to it. Es la reina de la economía doméstica. Su presencia en lecturas nos lleva a considerar cómo manejamos nuestras finanzas personales, control del hogar, alimentación y preocupaciones del día a día. Es caritativa, considerada y protectora. Al igual que sus familiares de la corte de los oros, tiene una mente pragmática y busca los soluciones eficientes. So it's the idea that she, again, this is pentacle energy, right? So she is the queen of her finances, right? She is somebody who considers how all of these things are going to work for her. How are they going to work with all of the different, you know, the different personal aspects of her life. She has control of the home. She has control of the day to day. And it's something that I think, like, one of the things that also is very highlighted for me is that she's also considerate and protective, right? And I think that's part of that feminine energy of, even though this is also somebody, right? It's almost like that balance of, yes, acknowledge your self worth, but also add that grace to it, right? Like, don't just, like we've mentioned earlier, like, we're learning, right? Don't just go ahead and start shedding all this negativity on yourself. You also have to make sure that you are protected, you know, and that you are the one that protects yourself, and that you are the one that advocates for yourself. Because no, like we've mentioned in this episode, no one else will do it for you, right? And the only one who can really do that is yourself. And so I think that the deck is trying to kind of highlight these aspects of what potentially building a relationship with your shadow self can, you know, create for you. This balance of that duality between the feminine and the masculine, the confidence to be able to say, no, I deserve this, and the grace to be able to say yes, and it's okay that, you know, you've made your mistakes, because this is part of that process, right? And we're gonna be okay. And it's that idea of, you are enough. You know, like, you did the best that you could with what you learned. Now you know better, and both of these are working together to kind of build this beautiful pentacle kingdom, right? And they're both very careful, right? Both of them are looking at that pentacle. They're very dedicated to the goal. And I feel like a lot of the times that focus, right? Our episode is called Focus and Flow. It can be really easy to get distracted, right? Or allow other things to get distracted. And so part of that process in building your relationship with the shadow self is to help filter all of that stuff out, whether it be people, whether it be relationships, whatever it is, career. It's, at the end of the day, all for your better good. And for the 10 of Swords here, it says, 10 de espadas, la noche oscura del alma. El 10 de espadas presenta nuestra caída al aquel momento en que debemos asumir que hemos perdido la batalla. Quizá fuimos engañados o simplemente una experiencia terminó y nos dejó en el lado doloroso de la verdad. Algunas cosas simplemente no salen como esperamos y aprender a afrontar estas duras realidades es parte esencial de nuestra evolución humana. Después de esto, solo tenemos una opción, levantarnos y continuar. I actually love how this deck
Yeah.
really describes the Ten of Swords because there's a different aspect to it, right? Like, I feel like traditionally the Ten of Swords emphasizes so much on the downfall. So basically, what this card is saying in Spanish is this card represents, right, like the dark side of the soul. It represents our downfall, those moments where we feel like we've really lost that battle. Maybe we've been lied to. Maybe, you know, something that we thought, you know, an experience that we thought was gonna happen the way that it was gonna happen didn't, and the way that it ended up being very hurtful. Was not the reality that we thought it was gonna be, and it's just, you know, the rest of this description says sometimes things just don't happen the way that we expect them to, right? And that learning how to kind of tackle and battle these experiences is part of our humanness, right? It's part of how we evolve as humans. It's a part of our process to be human. And that most importantly, after all of this, we only have one option, and it's to get up and continue, which is something that I feel like I don't really see a lot in the descriptions for the Ten of Swords in the decks. So it's that idea, right? Like the shadow work and the shadow self is here to really, even when you feel like you're so down and you're feeling like, why me, you know, why does this have to happen to me, or of course it didn't work out again. The idea is, I hate to say a cliche, but it's, you know, if you fail, it's, you just get up and try again, right? And that's the idea of this read, is that the shadow self is showing you there's something more to this, especially because with the oracle cards we have, look at the bigger picture. Oh my god, both of these are in Sagittarius. Look at the bigger picture, and luck is on your side. And we have full moon in Sagittarius and new moon in Sagittarius. And you know, it's part of that, right? The shadow self, I feel like we get so focused on the small and the nitty-gritty, and why didn't this happen, or why did it have to happen to me? And this is asking us to look at the bigger picture. You know, think about how we've talked about it. We've reflected, we saw after the fact, right, how things connected, but in the moment you're never going to see that, right? And at the end of the day, um because we have the new moon in Sagittarius, luck is on your side. Like, these cards, they couldn't even be more like the duality of all of this, right? We
Yes.
have the full moon, we have the new moon. Sagittarius is the one sign where it's represented by the arrows. So, you know, Sagittarius never misses. They're gonna go out and explore. Um, if it doesn't work out, oh well. You know, like, I feel like that's very much their persona, right? It's part of, then the duality of that is that they can't get attached to certain things, right? They might have commitment issues. But I think what the cards really want us to kind of emphasize is this idea of maybe lean a little bit to that aloofness, right? Why not lean into the idea of why not? Instead of why me, why not you, right? Like, what is this trying to show you? And the full moon, the new moon, I think it's gonna be a cycle. You know, it's never gonna end. There's always in the new moon, you're kind of building up to what it is that you want to make. The full moon is all about release, and it's going to keep going, right? It's a continual cycle. The moon goes through its cycle and its phases. And if you need it, right, I feel like another good thing is to kind of look to the moon and use that as a reminder of, this is just a season. You know, this isn't forever. There's still going to be this next phase. The moon goes through it. I'm going to go through it. And at the end of the day, I think the universe is here to show us that everything that happens to you, it is for your better good, right? And it is, don't think that you have bad luck. Don't think, why me? Don't think that this is just a series of unfortunate events for you. No, luck is on your side. The universe is always fighting for you. God is always fighting for you. Whoever it is that is for you is always fighting for you, because you're always going to be fighting for you. And you have to acknowledge that and learn that even those bad parts of yourselves, they're trying to show you something. They're trying to highlight something. You can only see shadow if light shines on top of it. But you have to see that shadow in order to know that you're there, you know? And I think it's a beautiful part of the human experience. Even if you think about it, a lot of, shows or media that portray spirits, they don't have shadows. That's kind of the way that they distinguish somebody who's human versus someone who's a spirit. And so just take that shadow work and that shadow self as an acknowledgement of, yeah, this is what makes me human. This is what makes me viable to be here and live through this experience. And that is more than enough reason for me to be on this earth. And I'll figure it out, and it's all going to work out in the end. And if something doesn't work out, don't worry about it, because the universe and you are working meticulously to get into this space. You just have to make sure that you're looking at it very carefully, right? With a lot of intention, with a lot of focus. Don't just be shooting arrows. Another kind of thing that pops into my mind is that phrase from I think it's Shang-Chi, where Aquafina, her character, right? She feels like she's been trying her whole life at everything. And one of the ways that her archer mentor tells her is, yeah, you're shooting, but you're not aiming at anything. So of course you're not hitting anything. You have to aim. So make sure that you're aiming with intention. You focus on what it is that you want. Everything else will become clear. Everything else will quiet itself down once you start, kind of even an ode to our last episode, right? Once you quiet those outside voices and listen to yourself and listen to your shadow bestie, everything's going to work out.
Just some interesting dates for anyone who's listening that may be attached to them. So the oracle cards, because I felt like I had to look this up because we're talking about moon phases. The last, in 2024, the full moon was in Sagittarius on May 23rd, 2024. And it was in the Sagittarius, and new moon was on May 7th. So for anyone who's listening, those are probably some important dates maybe for you to consider, look back on, reflect what happened that day, and maybe invest in a little bit more.
Mhm.
We were literally talking about May in the episode with relevance to Nicole.
Yeah.
So I think that's very full circle. What's your sign, Nicole?
I'm a Gemini.
A Gemini. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, we got a nice spread out here. Sandwiched by two Libras.
Yeah.
All this air energy around me.
Literally.
Air energy. Oh my God, that's so funny. We were just making that joke about the Christian school, but now we really have to do it, Kat. One of us.
One of us.
One of us.
Sorry, fam. Fam, thank you so much for an incredible read as always. But I think this one was really powerful. This whole episode has been so special and long time coming, really waiting for the right opportunity to have Nicole on the pod. So just again, a huge thank you to you for being here with us today. I can't wait to release this episode so that all of you can hear it. And we're so thankful for all of you, our listeners, for being here with us, episode in and episode out, season 1, season 2, and all of the seasons to come. And as always, if you enjoy this episode, like, share, subscribe, let your friends know. And also, leave us a comment. Let us know what resonated with you, where you see yourself in Nicole's story, in her own journey, and where are you on that journey, right? And where are we in that journey of yours, right? Are we doing anything here, with us getting together and talking? Are we making a difference in anybody's life? I know we are, but it's so nice, to have that space and that community for you to share that with us. I hope you feel safe with us, and we definitely feel safe sharing all of these things with you. So hopefully that has rubbed off a little bit.
Yeah. And definitely remember that there's more of Nicole on Sip and Grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, and remind us of some of those platforms to listen to you on.
Yes, so you can actually follow the podcast on Instagram at Sip and Grow the podcast. And you can follow me at Nicole_Di Pasquale. I have a very long last name, but we'll link it in the notes. I'll send
Yes,
it.
we will.
Okay. And then you can also follow my friend Dakota Wallace. She has her personal page on Instagram with the link to the page where you can buy the tea. So
Which was very delicious. I poured myself a second cup while we were
I
recording.
saw, and that's
the
so
first
rare.
time it's happened.
Yes.
That's
my
the first.
gosh.
Pam never finishes her tea.
I know. I get so absorbed
Insider
by that.
knowledge behind the scenes. Pam never finishes her tea.
That's
So
the
having
tea.
so having a second cup is pretty. Thank
Mhm.
you,
It's
Dakota.
monumental.
Wherever you are out there in West
Yeah.
Mass.
West Mass. We're the 100 people in your town.
It's amazing. Yeah, and I'm so excited to try more of her teas. They're so special, and it's nice to have somebody putting that much intention into the brews.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so important.
This is a reminder for her to keep doing it because
Yes.
she fell off the bandwagon, but I was like, Dakota.
Dakota,
Listen to this
Let's
episode.
do
oh,
it.
the world
We
needs
love it, we love it.
this. You're about to get some orders, girl.
know.
So get ready.
I was like, hold on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And until next time, bye.
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 See you around.